This is the Andy Project Podcast, episode number 3. Welcome to the Andy Project Podcast. Our focus is on inspirational stories, tools, and tips for those 50 and over. My name is Nadine O, and I am your host. Today we are joined again by author Joaquin Bowman. I hope you enjoy the show. This is Joaquin Bowman sharing a special reading from one of his books.
Now, this is from a book that I wrote. It was published in 2015 called Letters from Dolly. And the writer of the letters was Dolly McFarlane, who lived from 1905 to 1970. And I was fortunate to inherit from my mother-in-law letters that she had received from family members, a box of letters that were written by Dorothy McFarlane, Dolly, to her friend Hazel Hippler. This was a letter that Dolly wrote on June 11th, 1923. All afternoon I wiped the perspiration from various portions of my anatomy and have watched the heat simmer in waves out of the ground. Watched sombrero tanned men drive horses, white with lather, across sandy hollows. To turn and typewrite madly, wipe away more sweat, turn and watch tractors crawl through the blazing sunshine. There, a line of trees, greener than grass against the blue burning skyline. A mule team passes. The mules back their heads to bray. Dolly was exceptional, and my mother-in-law often talked about Dolly in these letters, and to think that they might have been discarded makes me very sad. That and I was very happy that I took the time to read them, and I reread them, and I couldn't believe the skill of this woman who was really a prairie woman. She had come over from Ireland when she was a young girl, uneducated. And the family lived out in the Midwest. And she really didn't get much schooling. But yet she had the gift of being able to write. She loved classical music. She married a guy that also loved classical music. And they basically were farm people. And she wrote, and she wrote, and she wrote. And I was very, very fortunate to be the one who received this package of letters. And, I mean, what I read is just one small, tiny fragment of Dolly's description of what it was like to be in that portion of the country at that time.
But important.
And there was a sense of hope, and yet there was this hopelessness where people were struggling. These were hard times. And she really, as we talked about earlier, she really had the ability to paint those pictures with words. And I know that she was also published in women's magazines. But with all my research, and I've had others help me in this regard, I can't really find the publications that used her work. But she was a published writer. She was also a woman who would do a lot of things to put food on the table when times were tough. I know she made dolls that she sold. character dolls,
Sure.
probably a version of like the American Girl dolls. She was making them and selling them. Um, she was a woman who was a survivor,
Mm-hmm.
and she talked about it with her writings.
Now, when did she pass?
Dolly died in 1970. They had moved from the Midwest. I believe they had 2 children, and I believe from my research that the children had moved to California, and Dolly and her husband followed them west. And so she died in California. And the last writings I have from Dolly are really the late 1940s.
Wow.
And I don't know what she did between that period and 1970 when she died, whether she continued writing or not. But that's where I lose track of her. And so I had these letters, and when I did my trilogy on my life, and I was also working with Tom Hickey to publish his books, I published these letters from Dolly in 2015 to earlier this year.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Well, it was an act of love, and it was really out of respect for my mother-in-law. I loved my mother-in-law. I don't know how many people say that, but I did. She was a very good and generous woman, and saw that what she gave me, I guess that was my inheritance, but what she gave me was really quite a fabulous gift, the gift of these letters. And I didn't take the time to really read the letters until my retirement. This was during my retirement. And then began to appreciate the gift that she had given me. And the wonderful writing ability of Dolly, and not only her writing ability, but a chance to get to know her as a very, very strong woman. That is way ahead of time.
That is so interesting to me. That is so interesting to me that it took that shift, that time where you had retired, and then you rediscovered those letters, this gift from your mother-in-law.
Well, the benefit of retiring, especially, I retired at 52. The benefit of retiring was I had time, which I really never thought I would have in my lifetime, is the time to do things. And one of the things was to sit down with this box of letters and to really delve into them and to really study the letters and to study the language.
What would you say to people who are approaching retirement, considering retirement, or forced to retire, about that second half of their life?
Well, in the old days, when I was working in industry, people didn't retire till they were 65. And unfortunately, I knew many, especially men, who retired, and within a few years they were dead.
Yeah.
And whether it was just bad luck or they really lost, their sense of purpose and kind of their will to go on. I don't know. I don't know all the answers, and I think it's different where someone chooses to retire, or they're forced to retire. So, I think people who are retired need to have that sense of purpose. You need to have a reason to get up in the morning. I remember my mother-in-law saying to me, unfortunately, she died of cancer. She was
sorry to hear
79
that.
years old. But she said to me, she she was always very busy, and then she retired. And she said to me, I just don't know how to fill my days.
Mm.
And that's sad. That's a tough thing. If you get up in the morning and you have nothing to do,
Yeah.
That's where it gets hard. And people that talk to me about, I'm thinking of retirement.
Mm.
I always ask the question, what are you going to do after you retire? What are you
Good
going to
question.
do with yourself? And that's a real important question, because you have to have a reason to go on.
Joaquin.
Well, people always say, well, we're going to travel. I've always wanted to go to Europe. And my wife and I also did that. I mean, we traveled a lot. We went to China. I've been in Russia, all over Europe, driving trips and everything else. But you come home.
You have to come home.
You're not going to be away forever, so you come home and you say, now what am I going to do today?
Mm-hmm.
So, I taught, I wrote, I helped other people write.
I think those are
the things I did.
Yeah, listening to your story, Joaquin, I'm really inspired by the fact that not only are you rediscovering yourself in the projects that you are doing and or have done, but that also you've come full circle in terms of now working with Tom Hickey on his writings, as he's now, I believe he's approaching 97, and that the fact that you're helping each other in this process.
Well, yes, and Tom, life does come full circle. You're absolutely correct, because when I started my career as 21 years old, out of Temple, needed a real job, and Tom gave that to me, and he gave me a real, a way to support my family, a real paycheck with benefits. And this part of, and I always felt that I owed Tom a great debt, a lot. I owed Tom my career, and so later on, when Tom was in his 90s, and he was looking for a sense of purpose, because his family was raised, his wife had passed away, and he was looking for a sense of purpose. And I said, Tom, what is it that you really would like to do? I guess you would call it a bucket list. And he said, well, I have this stuff that I put together from the time I was in India in the 1940s in the service. He said, I always wanted to pull that together into a book. And I said, well, let me see what you got. And he showed me what he had, and I said, well, why don't we work on this together? And it was an opportunity for me to give something back to Tom, who had given me great gifts when I was a young man. And so that I was able to give him something. So we did the first book on his time in India, and it's called Tom Hickey's India, A Soldier's Diary. And then the next project we worked on together was how his family survived the Depression.
Right.
And then the third book, which we just published, were the 10 lessons I learned in my nearly 100 years.
So the second book was Surviving the Great Depression, right?
Right. It's about his family story, and people, when they say, well, they talk about their family and so forth, and they don't think that anyone would care. It's like, well, this is boring. It only had to do with us. But when I got into this story of Tom and how his family got through the Depression, well, Tom's a storyteller, and that helps a great deal. That he had fabulous stories about living in Philadelphia, and eventually they moved to Allentown, and how his father had restaurants and tended bar and stuff like that, and it even gets into some early history of Dorney Park up in Allentown,
Mm-hmm.
that there are great stories that people have to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom is a good storyteller. So we did the surviving the Great Depression, and then I said, Tom, we're going to do more, and then he, basically told me to get lost. He said, what are you doing to me, Bowman? I said, Tom, you're a writer. I said, let's write. Mm-hmm. So he was doing these short essays mm-hmm. called his Musings, and they were fabulous little stories. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, not many people live to be your age. What lessons did you learn in all your years of life? And that led to this third book, which also includes some of his shorter essays, his musings.
Okay.
And so we put together this collection of writings, and now we're looking, I said, we need something to write about when you turn 97. Mm-hmm. And he's working on that book at this time.
So the book
that'll be his fourth book.
Okay, so the book that has just been released, which one is that?
Right. The 10 Lessons I Learned in My Nearly 100 Years. And all of these books, the Tom Hickey's India, Surviving the Great Depression, The Lessons I Learned, are all published on Amazon.
Wow. Amazon is a great...
Oh, you bet.
It's so great.
It helps people like ourselves who aren't going to publish a bestseller. I'm never going to be on the New York Times bestseller list, but it helps us to tell our stories and to preserve our stories.
That is so important, to preserve the stories, because if we don't document it, who's going to know?
It will be gone. It will be gone forever, and that's why I felt that I really had given my mother-in-law, who, again, I love dearly, mm-hmm. the gift of publishing these letters that she valued so much, the mm-hmm. letters from Dolly. Mm-hmm. That mm-hmm. these letters, this book, will live forever.
Yeah. Yeah. Live forever. Wow.
That Dolly won't be forgotten. And my mother-in-law won't be forgotten, because the book is attributed, it's dedicated to her. Mm-hmm. And I tell the story about her and the letters in the introduction to the book, so that her life goes on.
Wow. That's just so amazing.
And it is. And is there a huge audience for this stuff? No. Mm-hmm. If 10 people read it, that might be it. But that's great. That means that 10 people read it.
Right.
I'm happy with that.
One person at a time.
It's better than leaving the letters lay in a box and then the kids throw them out after we die.
Yes, that is so true, Joaquin. So true. Well, Joaquin, we're coming to the close of the You Are Not Done Yet podcast. I really want to take this time to thank you so much for joining us today and being a part of the Yandy Project.
I love it. Thank you. I think it's a great project.
I'm just so excited to see what happens in the future for you, the future for Tom Hickey, and all the future writings, photos, whatever, the little things that you might find along the way. I just think it's just so awesome, and that I look forward to our friendship growing as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And so thank you, everyone, for listening to the You Are Not Done Yet podcast. I am Nadine O, your host, and I hope you will come back and join us again real soon. Like what you hear? Just trek over to our website at yandyproject.com. You can leave a comment there. We'd love to hear from you. And whatever you do, subscribe so you can stay informed on the latest posts and updates of our podcast. See you there.